How many times have we found ourselves in situations where we feel overwhelmed by the number of problems and decisions we have to make? In those moments, our minds fill with doubts, fears, and worries. We find ourselves in a constant state of analysis, trying to find solutions and answers on our own. But what would happen if we simply decided to trust God and stop worrying so much? In this video, we are going to explore this concept deeply. We will talk about the importance of faith and trust in God, and how we can learn to release our worries and let His power guide our lives. We will dive into the Scriptures, share inspiring stories, and offer practical advice on how we can apply these principles in our daily lives. So, if you've ever felt that life is too overwhelming, that decisions are too difficult, or that worries are consuming you, this video is for you. I invite you to stay with us. Open your heart and your mind and discover how trusting God can change your life in a deep and meaningful way. To begin, let's talk about what it really means to trust God. This is a concept that may seem simple in theory, but putting it into practice is a completely different matter. First, I want you to imagine a common situation. You are facing a problem in your life. Maybe it's an issue at work, a difficult relationship, or a concern about the future. Our natural reaction is to think and think, to look for solutions, and to try to control every aspect of the situation. We tell ourselves that if we think hard enough, we'll eventually find a solution. But here is where the power of trusting God comes in. Trusting God means recognizing that we don't always have all the answers, and that it's okay not to have them. It means believing that God has a plan for us even when we can't see it. It's accepting that even though we don't understand why certain things happen to us, God is in control, and His purpose for us is good. For some, this may sound like an abstract idea, so let's make it more concrete. Imagine you're on a boat in the middle of a storm. The wind is blowing hard, the waves are huge, and it seems like the boat is going to sink. Now imagine that you have on board the best captain in the world, someone who has sailed through the worst storms and has always come out victorious. Trusting God is like trusting that captain. You don't need to know how he's going to handle every wave or every gust of wind. You just need to know that He will. The Bible is full of stories that illustrate this point. A classic example is the story of Moses and the Exodus. The Israelites were trapped between the Egyptian army and the Red Sea, with no apparent way out. But Moses trusted God, and the sea parted, allowing the Israelites to cross safely. This story shows us that when we trust God, He can do the impossible. So how can we begin to develop this trust in God? Here are some practical steps. Prayer. Prayer is a powerful way to connect with God. It's not just about asking for things, but about opening our hearts and sharing our worries, fears, and hopes. Through prayer, we can feel His presence and guidance in our lives. Studying the Scriptures. The Bible is an inexhaustible source of wisdom and comfort. By reading the Scriptures, we can find stories, teachings, and promises that remind us of God's power and love. Surround yourself with people who share your faith. This can be of great help. Together, we can support, encourage, and remind one another of the importance of trusting God. Reflection and gratitude. Take time to reflect on the blessings in your life and thank God for them. This helps us see His hand in everything we do. Remember, trusting God doesn't mean we will never have problems or challenges. It means that when we face those challenges, we can do so with the assurance that we are not alone, that God is with us, guiding and protecting us. It's normal to have doubts and fears. When we try to trust God, we live in a world that teaches us to rely on ourselves, to look for practical and tangible solutions. So how can we overcome those doubts and fears to truly trust God? First, it's important to recognize that having doubts doesn't mean we are bad believers. Doubts are part of the human experience and can be an opportunity to strengthen our faith. It's like a muscle. To become stronger, it needs to be exercised. One of the most powerful examples in the Bible of someone who faced his doubts is the Apostle Peter. Let's remember the story of when Jesus walked on water. Peter, with his characteristic enthusiasm, asked Jesus to let him walk toward him on the water. At first, Peter did it, but when he saw the wind and the waves, he began to sink. Peter doubted and was afraid. But what did Jesus do? He reached out his hand and saved him, saying, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" This story teaches us that even in the midst of our doubts and fears, God is there to hold us and help us. So, how can we face our own doubts and fears? Here are some practical strategies. Accept your doubts. The first step is to accept that doubts are normal. Don't punish yourself for having them. Instead, use your doubts as an opportunity to go deeper into your faith and seek answers. Seek answers in the Bible. Many times, the answers to our doubts are found in the Scriptures. Dedicate time to reading and meditating on God's Word. You'll find stories and teachings that help you strengthen your faith. Talk to God about your doubts. Prayer doesn't have to be only for asking for good things. You can be completely honest with God about your fears and doubts. He understands and wants to help you overcome them. Talk with people of faith. Sometimes talking with someone who has gone through similar experiences can be very encouraging. Look for people of faith in your community with whom you can share your struggles and receive support and guidance. Remember God's promises. The Bible is full of God's promises for us. One of the most comforting verses is Isaiah 41:10, where God says, "Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." Remembering these promises can give us the strength to keep going, act despite the fear. Sometimes the best way to overcome fear is to face it. Take small steps of faith, trusting that God is with you. As you see how God works in your life, your trust will grow. It is crucial to remember that trusting God is a continuous journey. There will be moments of doubt and fear, but each of those moments is an opportunity to draw closer to Him and strengthen our faith. So far, we've talked about what it means to trust God and how to face our doubts and fears. Now, let's see what happens when we truly trust God and how we can experience His power in our lives. First, I want to share an inspiring story from the Bible that clearly shows God's power in action. The story of David and Goliath. Most of us know this story, but let's briefly go over it. David, a young shepherd, faced the giant Goliath, a Philistine warrior who had terrified the army of Israel. No one dared to confront Goliath, but David trusted in God. With only a sling and a stone and the faith that God was with him, David defeated Goliath. This story is a powerful reminder that no matter how great the challenges we face may be, when we trust in God, His power is manifested in our lives. But how can we see this power in our daily lives? Everyday miracles. We often think of miracles as grand events, but God also works in the small details of our lives. Maybe it's an unexpected solution to a problem, a seemingly casual encounter that turns out to be meaningful, or a feeling of peace in the middle of a storm. These small miracles are signs of God's power in action, personal transformation. When we trust in God, we see changes within ourselves. Maybe before we were impatient, and now we find more peace and patience in our lives. Or perhaps we used to worry constantly, and now we feel greater confidence and serenity. These inner changes are evidence of God's transforming power, restored relationships. Faith in God can also bring healing to our relationships. Maybe you've had a tense relationship with a friend or family member. Through prayer and trust in God, you can see how He works to restore that relationship, bringing forgiveness and reconciliation, direction and purpose. Trusting in God helps us find direction and purpose in our lives. Sometimes we feel lost or unsure about which path to take, but when we put our trust in God, He guides us. Proverbs 3:5-6 tells us, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight." This means that by trusting in God, we can find clarity and purpose in our decisions and actions. Overcoming obstacles. Life is full of challenges and obstacles, but with trust in God, we can overcome them. Maybe you're facing illness, financial difficulties, or problems at work. By trusting in God and seeking His guidance, we can find solutions and strengths we didn't know we had. I want to encourage you that when you face challenges, take a moment to reflect and look for how God is working in your life. It may not always be obvious at first, but over time, you'll be able to see His hand guiding and sustaining you. So far, we've talked about what it means to trust God, how to face our doubts and fears, and how to seek God's power in action. Now let's focus on how we can cultivate and maintain this trust in God in our daily lives. This is an ongoing process that requires practice and dedication. Develop a prayer routine. Prayer is fundamental to strengthening our relationship with God. Set aside time each day to talk with Him, not only to ask for things, but also to thank Him and seek His guidance. Prayer can happen anytime and anywhere, a short prayer while driving to work, or a longer conversation before going to sleep. The important thing is to make prayer a regular part of your life. Study the Bible regularly. The Bible is a source of inspiration and strength. Take time to read and meditate on the Scriptures. Look for verses that speak about trusting God and reflect on how to apply them in your life. You can use Bible apps, daily devotionals, or join a Bible study group to deepen your understanding. Spiritual journaling. Keeping a spiritual journal can be a powerful tool to sustain your faith. Write down your thoughts, prayers, and experiences. Record the ways you've seen God work in your life. This habit will not only help you remember God's blessings, but also give you perspective and a record of your spiritual growth. Practice gratitude. Gratitude is an effective way to strengthen our trust in God. Take time each day to thank God for the blessings in your life, both big and small. It can be something as simple as giving thanks for a sunny day, a meaningful conversation, or a delicious meal. Gratitude helps us focus on the positive and recognize God's presence in our lives. Surround yourself with a community of faith. Never underestimate the power of a faith community. Participate in your local church, Join small groups or Bible studies and seek friends who share your faith. Having people with whom you can talk about your faith, share your struggles and joys, and pray together can be incredibly encouraging and strengthening. Acts of service. Serving others is a way to express our faith in action. Look for opportunities to help those around you, volunteering in your community, helping a neighbor, or participating in service projects at your church. By serving others, we follow Jesus' example and demonstrate our trust in God through our actions. Meditation and silence. Taking time for meditation and silence can help you hear God's voice. In a world full of noise and distractions, it's important to find quiet moments to connect with Him. You can practice Christian meditation by focusing on a verse or a prayer, or simply sit in silence and let God speak to your heart. Remember God's promises. Keep in mind the promises of God found in the Bible. Write them down and place them in visible spots on your mirror, your desk, or your car dashboard. Remembering these promises daily will help you maintain your trust in God, especially in difficult times. Cultivating and maintaining our trust in God is a lifelong journey. There will be ups and downs, but each step you take will draw you closer to Him and strengthen your faith. Remember, you are not alone on this path. God is with you every step of the way, guiding and sustaining you. The Bible is an inexhaustible source of wisdom and comfort. In its pages, we find verses that encourage us to trust in God, even in the most difficult times. These verses can serve as anchors for our faith, reminding us that God is always with us and that we can fully trust Him. Here are some of the most powerful ones. Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight. This verse reminds us that our trust should be in God, not in our own abilities or understanding. When we acknowledge God in everything we do, He guides our steps and shows us the right path. Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a future and a hope. God has a plan for each of us, and those plans are good. Even when we don't understand why certain things happen, we can trust that God has a purpose and a future filled with hope for us. Philippians 4:6-7. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. This verse invites us to bring our worries to God in prayer and to thank Him for His blessings. In return, He gives us peace beyond understanding, a peace that protects our hearts and minds. Isaiah 40:31. But those who trust in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. Trusting in God gives us the strength to keep going, even when we are tired or discouraged. It lifts us above our circumstances and gives us the energy to continue. Psalm 46:1. God is our refuge and strength and ever-present help in trouble. In times of difficulty, God is our refuge and strength. We can turn to Him for help and find comfort and protection in His presence. Romans 8:28. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. This verse assures us that God is working in all things for our good. Even when we face challenges, we can trust that God has a purpose and is working in our lives for our benefit. Psalm 37, verse 5. Commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and He will act. Commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and He will act. By surrendering our paths and decisions to God, we can trust that He will act on our behalf. We don't need to carry the burdens alone. We can trust that God is in control. These verses are not just comforting words, but powerful promises from God. By memorizing them, meditating on them, and applying them in our daily lives, we can strengthen our faith and our trust in Him. I encourage you to write them down, read them daily, and allow these words to sink deeply into your heart.